Hi, and welcome back to Copic in the Craft Room. This is Michelle Houghton, and we are going to be looking at a face again today with some darker skin tones, and I am going to use a neat resource, or at least talk a little bit about this to start. So if you want to skip ahead to the coloring, that is fine. But this book has been out for a few years now, actually several, that is written by Marianne Walker. And it's some of the tips and tricks that we teach in the beginning certification class with our Copic class, but it goes into a lot more depth, and actually the intermediate as well, but it goes into a lot more depth about lighting situations and how to light objects, to find the shadows, to find the highlight, what shape should they be. We get asked that all the time, and this was Marianne's response to that a few years back. But it's still an amazing resource. And so if you've got questions about where do I put my light source, how does that work, how does the shadow look, this is a great guide for that. It's called Shadows and Shading. It's by Marianne Walker, and it really is a nice beginner guide to some basic lighting situations. It talks about value, it talks about how shadows work and why they work the way they do. It talks about creating distance in your images, where to throw those shadows, using basic light guides, those plastic light guides that sometimes you've seen. And then also talking a little bit about, it gets into some of the different types of light sources, using different colors to create light and shadow. So it really is a neat basic, and it starts with true basics about basic shapes and then advancing those into more advanced shapes, but using those base shapes. And we've talked about that here on Copic in the Craft Room as well, but I just think if a lot of us, I know for me in particular, I need a hard copy sitting in front of me that I can look at. Oh yeah, okay, that's how I'm doing a hollow sphere, a bowl, or a plate. That's how I need to do that. This is a great guide for that, and it has some great memory pieces of, oh yeah, remember that this is how we're gonna do this. Today specifically, because I'm looking at a face, it does have a section about shading faces and some basics of that. Some of these images you'll recognize if you've taken the certification class, that some of these would be ones that you've seen in that manual as well. One of the tips that she gives in this book that I just think is incredibly helpful, that if you're coloring a face and you're just not sure where to put that light source or how that light source will affect the face, find a photograph, even if it has nothing to do with the actual face. Find a photograph that has a similar facing, and then hopefully you can find one that also has a similar light source for what you're looking for. So the little photo that she has in here is a face that is facing to my left, off to the left-hand side. It's being lit also from that left-hand side. Well, the image I want to color today is facing towards the left a little bit. Obviously, he's turned his face a little more forward, but if I light it from the left as he's facing into the light, which is pretty common, I can use some of these same clues about where to put my shadows. So I'm going to use this kind of side by side. I'll take it over to the side. You won't be able to see it as well. But I just wanted to let you know about this. There's some great information in here, and because we get asked that so often, this is something you can pick up online. Imagination International does carry it, but you can find it other places as well. So make sure you check it out if that is something that you continually have questions over. I am going to do a darker skin tone on this image, and I'm going to use some of my favorite darker skin tones. I'm going to go through a series of 20s, and so I will speed that up. And I will do both his skin and his hair. I'm not going to go ahead and do his hoodie. I'm going to keep that simple. Now this image does have glasses on here as well. I'm going to use some tips and tricks that I learned in the Faces and Hair manual, both in our class, but also in Marianne's Copic guide as well, to look at that kind of the glasses area. All right, so I'm going to zoom in and we will speed up. So I'm starting with an E21, which is a base color If you've seen this technique with me before, that E21 is going to disappear in the end. You will not see any of this light color, but it's giving me that base so that I have a warmer color underneath versus that bright white. E23 is first, and for me this is always the hardest step because it's really mapping out where I want my shading to be. I'm using that photo for reference. I have it kind of sitting above where you can't see, but I know my lighting's coming in from that left-hand side, so the majority of shading comes in from the right. And I get the neck real good, and then I switch to E25. Now, with the way I've done this, what I do is the E25 literally covers up everything I've mapped out with the E23. It'll make sense in the end, but that just helps me if I make some mistakes early on. E27 is next, less of this color, in particular under the glasses. I'm keeping that area lighter purposefully. E29 is last. Normally this would go in around that eye, but because of those glasses, I'm leaving that out. Then I go in reverse, E27, to start blending that in, E25, and so that's smoothed out all those layers now except that last layer. So E23 comes in and it goes all the way across. Now it keeps that area lighter, but on top of that base, it gives kind of that nice warmer color. I realize that the ear is not dark enough yet, so I am going to come back and do a little more. The lips I'm trying to keep really natural looking, darkening up that ear, and actually when this image is done, I don't think it's quite dark enough. E23 to smooth that out again. Little bit of colorless blender on the eye and on the glasses to just clean that up. And then I used an E04 just to add a touch of color to that bottom lip. Back to the colorless blender to add a little bit to that glass on the lenses. So I'm clearing out the area kind of on the lens. B97 is just what I'm using for the frame of the glasses. I'm truly just going to color these in. There's a lot of shading going on that face, so I'm not going to worry too much of it. Colorless blender again to kind of open up the whites of those eyes. E44 is what I'm going to base his hair in. It's a great base earth tone for darker hair colors. Now, obviously his eyebrows are still white, but I'm going to come in with my E47 and start those. Then I'm going in with squiggles, and this first layer of squiggles is going to go all the way out to the edge. You can still see that E44 just showing through, but not as much. E49 is next, pretty dark color at this point, so as I get out to the outer edges, especially along the top, I kind of spread those squiggles out a little bit. W9, to get it even darker, I focused in around the face, down the right hand side. C9 is next, to cool it off, get it a little darker, and I am darkening the brows up with an E49. I feel like they didn't get quite dark enough. One finished face, hair, we've got glasses, we have some pretty accurate shading, darker skin tones. So hopefully this was helpful to you. This is one, we have this one and then one last image from the Dana Clark colors. I just feel like these images are really nice for some basic informational stuff. So I have the 4 of them and we've used them quite heavily. I have one more because I had a request for the braids and seeing how the hair and skin kind of blend together. And so I'm going to do that in the next few weeks. But hopefully you got some information out of this, whether it was glasses or shading or skin tones. Thank you for joining me this week. I really do appreciate it. And I hope you will come back and stop by again. In the meantime, have a happy, colorful week.